Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Economic Preppers, where we teach you to be prepared and not scared throughout all the different styles of news. We got plenty to cover today, so we're going to jump right into it. First off, before I do that, I got to welcome our other guests here. Patrick, how you doing today?
Hey, guys, I'm doing great.
Dylan, how things out in Colorado?
Oh, they're fantastic. It was the great Bluebird Day, so it's just great to be here.
Yeah, it's another kind of day. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we've got plenty of stories to talk about. Let me share my screen and go over the first one. We had a major banking issue that happened this past week, Patrick. I know that you were on this quickly, and obviously great. Now all my windows are jumping around. I swear I can get this. Well, it was Bank of America. So Bank of America had an issue.
Yeah, Bank of America was like going crazy. Customers were tweeting all about it, saying, hey, we woke up, we've got no money in our accounts. They pawned it up like it was a Zelle issue. Zelle saying everything is good on our side. There are no other banks really experiencing issues right now with Zelle. So right now they're kind of looking at this going, what the hell, Bank of America, where's my money? They're walking in, they're saying, tell me to figure out, help me figure out where's my money. And they're saying, no, you got to call customer service. Customer service doesn't answer the phone. So customers were walking in irate, trying to figure out where their money went. And it was just a real eye opener again, that you can wake up one day and your money is gone.
Yeah. And that's definitely a scary thing. Like if you can't get access to your funds, this is happening into other countries too, but has not trickled into the United States yet. But for a major bank like Bank of America, which is one of the biggest banks in the country, that's a major deal. Dylan, did you get any feedback or see any exposure to this?
No, I didn't, thankfully, because I have used Bank of America in the past, and I wouldn't like to see my money missing. It's obviously not good to see an institution as large as Bank of America have troubles like this, but it's no surprise that we're seeing cracks arise.
Yeah, and we've got other cracks that are about to hit on the horizon. Speaking of which, Patrick, we wanted to talk about. I think you found a really good video from our friend Joe Brown over at Heresy Financial. I think you want to introduce the clip, or you don't want me to just play it for a little bit?
Yeah, I just wanted to share this with you guys because not only did it, provoke me to think about what do I value and what do we all value, but I was actually wondering what you guys thought about it historically. What you think about it. So let me share this video with you guys, and you guys just tell me what you think. This is going to be something we want to do every once in a while. I want to feature one of my favorite influencers, one people I respect. Joe Brown is definitely one of those guys from Heresy Financial. You guys go check him out. He's quick, he's articulate, just as we're going to show you right here.
All right, we'll play about 2 minutes of it. Here we go.
Small transactions, instant and free. So when this current fiat monetary system finally fails, which is a matter of when, not a matter of if, every fiat currency throughout history has failed, and global reserve currency has changed with whoever is the superpower at the time. This means that we will have competitors for the new base form of money for everyone around the world pop up. One of them will be CBDCs, another one will be commodity-backed money, and another one will be Bitcoin. Now, in my opinion, central bank digital currencies are doomed to fail because you cannot exert top-down control over a complex system without catastrophic errors that result in the destruction of the system itself. So central bank digital currencies will be tried and most certainly will fail. This means that when we look long-term, like decades into the future, we've got two options for what this future monetary system looks like. It will likely either be something like Bitcoin or a commodity-backed money. Now, I personally have no idea which one will win. Really what it comes down to is what the people choose. When you look back at history and study the declines and the falls of empires and of currencies, what you notice is that the money that a government chooses after the last money failed is almost always the money that the people have already chosen. Because by the time the government's money fails, that means people have stopped accepting it for payment. They've already started accepting payment of something else. So if the government wants any purchasing power whatsoever, they are forced to adopt the money that the people have already started using. At the end of the day, though, money is a winner-take-all game. So one of them.
So that's what I want to discuss, guys. To me, it's what do you think about his notion of the three different types? We can see that happening clearly with CBDCs. We hear Bitcoin is its own class of its own, which I agree with him on. And then you look at commodity-backed currency. So those are the three that he suggests. But then he makes a really good point at the end is, so what is it going to be? Historically, it's been what the people value most. Mm-hmm. In this show, I want to look at it from a perspective of when we're out there in our communities, what are you guys seeing out there? Not just us three, but even in our community. You guys post in the comments. What are you seeing valued in your community? Right now, I'm seeing propane tanks valued in my community. I'm seeing silver highly valued. You're even exchanging eggs with silver right now. And we're definitely seeing gold and Bitcoin in value as well. Cash, not so much. It's just something that they're using. So I'm trying to understand. Do you guys agree with Joe? And what do you think about what he had to say?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And I think he's on to something there with his points, especially creating those three categories. I think one big issue that hits two of the categories really hard is the hits the CBDCs, and then it hits the commodity backed money, is the reliance on a trusted third party. I mean, CBDCs only work as long as the country, the institution that issues them, that is behind them, is still standing. And obviously, we've seen throughout history that the country in power isn't always the one that stays in power. And then same thing for commodity backed money as well, right? It's same thing. And we've seen how commodity backed money has failed over and over and over again because there's an institution in power. They get into a situation where it's not necessarily good for them, and then they start manipulating how much they back the currency by with the commodities. And so we've seen how that plays out. And I haven't seen anything that would suggest that it'd be any different over any sort of significant time frame in the future.
Yeah, I think we go back to. I think Joe brings up some really good points. I think we go back to like the basic principles that we come back to, things that we talked about when we did our first economic preppers event down in Dallas last October. And by the way, you can see on the ticker down below, we have another event coming up next month in Wisconsin area. There's details down below for that. But money is a means of exchange. That's really the purpose is just like you can't trading eggs for silver. That's just one market. But if you take that, you go outside that market. What is the value of eggs? They're perishable. What is the value? Do people still value silver? I think that we're going to go back to probably silver and gold for the most part. But you're going to have some people will accept cash, some people will accept silver and gold, and eventually some people will accept cryptocurrency. You're going to have all three, but it could happen suddenly. And if it happens more suddenly, then you can make a strong argument that crypto isn't ready for the masses. It's just a little bit too complicated for people to use. But reaching in your pocket and pulling out a silver coin is much easier to use. So there's values in strong cases for all of them. But the key point is that fiat currencies always die. And we're seeing the death of the dollar. And no one alive here on this planet has ever seen a world without the U.S. dollar. So it's new for all of us. We don't know exactly how it's going to play out.
Yeah. And I think one final point on this is when you talk about money and, one big problem with fiat currencies is the inflation rate of that. And I think it might have been Michael Saylor that mentioned this, is like when you have a high inflationary environment, the money always breaks down into an asset layer and a currency layer. Right. And so we're going to see that happen more and more. And you have to ask yourself, well, what is going to be the asset layer? And asset layer typically is going to be something more stable, something that holds its value more over time, something that has more trust and reliance, so that you can store the bulk of your wealth in that. And you can store a little portion of your wealth for day-to-day activities in that currency layer that loses value over time, or that's exposed to more risk, like the Bank of America story you showed. If all your money's in Bank of America, you were probably freaking out. But if you had your money invested in assets that you can control and had some in Bank of America, sure, it sucks to lose any money, but your whole livelihood isn't at risk, right? You can pull from those assets over time as needed if you get into that situation where the currency disappears.
Yeah, again, and people are so, happy with the idea that they're insured in the banks. But again, we know that's not fully insured. We know you're roughly 1% to 2% insured by the FDIC. So when you're banking on $100,000 being there and you wake up in the morning and it's gone, what are you going to do? Are you ready for that day? Because there's a lot of people who woke up yesterday and found themselves in that position. They didn't know how they were going to pay their mortgage. They didn't know how they're going to pay for lunch. They didn't know how they're going to pay for gas that day. Their money was gone. And they went to the bank and they had no help. Who did they turn to? Who would you turn to? Who's your community? This show is about engaging us to understand that our community is bigger than just one person, right? So if your bank goes down, who in your circle has resources that you can reach out to, and how are we going to survive together? Because this is not a matter of if, It's a matter of when is it going to happen again to more people? They're running out of money. They don't have the ability to cover their obligations. It's be ready.
Yeah, you have to be ready, and like they're also running out of time. And I think the timing of what happened this week is very interesting. It was the middle of the month, it was the middle of the week, and it was after a holiday. So I think if you're going to have a test of what happens if funds aren't suddenly available and how people react, that was pretty good timing because most people get paid on Thursdays or Fridays, and like a bank shutdown on a Monday, we already had that. So testing things on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, you could make an argument. Maybe this was a test to see the reaction of the masses and see what they were going to be used to, because there's other things that are coming on the horizon, namely the debt ceiling. That's next. That's our next story. So this one is about our debt limit ceiling is going to happen on January 19th. And I started talking about this on one of my videos on my channel because of what was going on when they elected the new Speaker of the House. And they hinted in several stories how like the government may face some real stumbling blocks and decision points and slowdowns and shutdowns because this debt ceiling, which is this is like we're up against, like every so often they have a debt ceiling. This is how much they can spend for the budget, and we keep bumping up against it. So they've historically kept raising the debt ceiling higher and higher. I think it's 31 trillion now, but they're going to bump their head again this week, or actually today as we record. It's today. Now they can do certain things, but it's really interesting to see that, this is coming up and they can extend things for a few months. But Patrick, what's your take on the debt ceiling?
I mean, guys, this is like really simple. Let's break it down in simple terms. The government doesn't make money. They collect taxes. They spend more than they bring in. So therefore, they're broker. Every year, they become more broke. This is a really weird game because the other idea is we know what the Fed's been doing. They've been slowly increasing interest rates. Why? They are trying to preserve the value of the dollar. They are trying to make sure that people don't spend their money, and they're trying to bring down inflation. And then here we go, and they're going to say, well, we've kind of hit our credit card limit this month. It's like me looking at my wife going like, I got the idea. We're going to call the credit card company and ask them to increase our credit card limit. I figured it out. Our problem. It's a solved problem. But she's like, so what are we going to do tomorrow? I was like, I don't know. I was thinking about booking a trip to Hawaii. Like, what are you talking about, Patrick? How are we spending more money when we don't have any money? You're spending money we don't have. So when you borrow more money, you increase the interest. You only go more broke. And that's only going to make what the Fed's been doing like kind of counterproductive yet again, because if they throw money back into the system, then they're not helping with the inflation issues that they're doing by raising interest rates. So what the hell are you guys doing, guys? I have no idea what's happening here, but the real issue we're dealing with is they can't balance their budget. They don't know how to spend money. And we know our money's not going anywhere that it needs to be, guys. Come on, let's not kid ourselves. We know money is not going where it's supposed to go. If they were actually to tighten the budget and the money were to go where we need it to go in the right places, then we'd probably be okay. We'd be able to pay back our debt. But right now, I mean, who's going to give us more credit? Because if we default, the bond rating goes down. That screws everybody.
Dylan, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, it's a little bit of theater with this debt limit, right? We've been here, done that before. It's just like now a consistent thing. And of course, it takes resources to continually hit this limit and have to change it and talk about updating it. So that's kind of annoying, knowing that there's that little bit of slowdown and a little bit of productivity loss, just talking about how we're inefficient in managing our money. And then I think the key thing to take away here is the interest rate on that debt. As that debt goes up, the interest continues to pile up. I think now, I think it's around 1.2 trillion or so. That'd be about 4% of 31 trillion, around that. Is the interest rate on that debt, or it might be a little bit less, like say it's 3%, so like $900 billion. That is creeping up. That is getting big very, very quickly. And the big problem, like you mentioned, Patrick, that the government get the revenue through taxes. So they're now going to start looking for ways to pull in more taxes. need to have that money come in order if they have any hopes of offsetting even just the interest expense, not to mention all their other expenditures. And they're going to be in a real big problem, or a potential problem is if we have any sort of recession or pullback where the asset prices continue to go down and people lose jobs, so they're not pulling in money. Those are areas where you'll have a reduction in taxes, because if your house goes down in value, and if a lot of houses go down in value, well, the property taxes are less, right? If the percentage remains the same. If you aren't working, if lots of people aren't working their jobs, well, they're not able to pay taxes on, because they're not making a salary to pay taxes on. So that's puts them in a real bind. But the interest expense on that debt is going to continue to go up. So that's not a good situation to be in.
Yeah, and I think that it is theater, and there are things that they can do. Like they say it's January 19th. It's not a hard deadline. They can play games. They can push off payments for a certain while. And if you read into the details of the story, they can say that they can play games out until June, which is another significant month that we'll talk about later as we sort of see things as Patrick and I and Dylan look at things for the rest of the year and how things are going to play out. Timing is the hardest thing to predict, but it's interesting. But as far as timing goes, let me share two other things before we start moving on to world news. First off, I don't know if you guys knew this, but today is National Popcorn Day, January 19th, same as the debt ceiling day. So, there's the old phrase, get your popcorn ready. Things could be happening there. And this other thing, now, again, it's the 17th letter. It's information. We don't know, but it's interesting to say that, 5 years ago, I'm getting the math right now, so we're in 2023, 5 years ago on that date, or which is this date, it says, remember this day. Does that mean there's a lot of, synergy and a lot of timing about the same day they repeat on these kind of messages? But, we'll see how it all plays out. But we have lots more stories to talk about as well. First off, we'll start transitioning over to the world news. So let's see, Dylan, I think you had the first story there, which was about the case for bullish Bitcoin. So while I pull it up,
Yeah.
why don't you start to lead that off?
All right, guys. So I got this bottle of wine here, and I'll tell you more about the wine here in a minute. But for now, I want to talk about this tweet by Dr. Jeff Ross. And I am no expert in all of these areas, but Jeff Ross, he's a Bitcoin guy. He lives out here in Colorado, but he's been Dr. Bear over the past, I don't know, eight months or so. And now he's just turned into Dr. Bull. And if you see here, he has all these different indicators that he's been watching that he views as bullish in the market. So this tweet is just meant to show you that people that think, hey, taking a bullish is not.
Yeah, we got a little bit of bandwidth issue with Dylan there, but we got the crux of it there. I'm looking at these things. Patrick, how many of these you I recognize the Dixie. That's the dollar against everything else. The VIX is the volatility measure. SPY, that's like the Standard & Poor's, I think. So there's a lot and Bitcoin at the end for sure. Some of the ones in the middle, I don't know, but I think I'll do some homework and look at these up. But this is a good list to go look at. But yeah, I think there's a lot of indicators that a lot of technical things that are out there that says that we're at the bottom and we should be going up. But I think there's also a good case to be made that, nothing's really normal anymore. So it's hard to say that, that past is going to indicate the future very well this time.
For me, I'm still looking at this going, I know I'm a bull long term, guys. Like, there is no way in my mind I would consider myself a bear. I do think we're still in a bearish trend. I think this was just totally a bull trap. I see Bitcoin going much lower. I still am waiting for minor capitulation. So at this point, I'm not ready to say the bear market's over.
Well, that's a great transition to Dylan's other tweet that he wanted to point out, which is about bear markets. So this is the one from Cane Island. You want to talk about this, Dylan?
Yeah, so go ahead and can you enlarge that image, please? If you click on it.
Yes.
I thought it was, yeah, in the tweet. So I saw this, and I thought it was an interesting chart. And obviously, none of this is investment advice, and make sure to look into it. I only bring these up for things to look into and consider and to use to update your awareness of what's going on. Wait, can you make it big again?
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. So you can kind of see it's 2022 and average. So our market that we're in an average of all the bear markets, I think from 1973 to 2001. Right? And you can see them all plotted out there over business days on the bottom, and it starts from the peak and the how far it goes down. So you see, we're about 2/3 of the way to the average point.
Hmm.
They have the 28th of May 2024 as an indicator for the Bitcoin halving. But it's just an interesting chart to give you an idea of how long other bear markets have lasted and what it looks like in terms of pullback percentages from the peaks.
Yeah, and I'm going to hint at the dates. I think Patrick wants to jump in there too. We're looking at this summer as probably the bottom. We'll talk about it more in the show. Patrick, is that what you're about to say?
Yeah, I mean this data supports what I believe as well, I guess. But
yeah,
I'm happy to see you brought it and not me.
Well, Patrick, you did bring two other topics here, which was, let me share those right now as I juggle the screen. And the first one was about, let's see, there's the image. So that was about the Coinbase halting operations in Japan.
Yeah, man, that was pretty cool because you guys, Coinbase just started in Japan in 2021. So you would have thought that there would be a lot of just like appetite for crypto, at least for a certain period of time. But what they're seeing is the reality is Coinbase is cutting staff. The Japanese markets are becoming very frugal. Now, what you have seen in the past, if you guys don't know this about the Japanese markets, the U.S. is happy with their interest rates and their margins being a whole lot higher than Japan is. Japan usually keeps their inflation and their interest rates right around, what is it, Jeff? Like 2.5%, like a 0.25%, and it went up to like 0.5% now. So, Japan is experiencing like this level of inflation as well, but they're different than the US. They're used to budgeting and not spending more than they have. So when their budget like runs out quickly, they start to really bring things back and tighten real quick. And one of the things we've seen is in the Japanese markets, people aren't spending a whole lot of money in crypto. Therefore, Japan, Coinbase is halting all of their operations there. This is one of the impacts we're seeing of the global recession that has been happening. They're trying to convince you it hasn't been happening. It's just starting. The recession has been here already for another quarter here gone by. So I'm not even concerned that we're in a recession. I'm concerned of the impacts of the recession now that people have been blindsided, trying to have wool pulled over their eyes, saying that the recession's not here. Jobs are going quickly. And this is one of the problems we're seeing globally is that Japan here halting Coinbase operations, not even due to regulatory issues, just due to the fact that they're not spending money.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot to be gleaned by looking at world economies, and that's why we had this segment, because I look at all over. I've looked at the BRICS nations. I look at Asia, because with cryptocurrency for sure is global, but the world economy is all tied together. Japan's very different than China, which is very different than South Korea, which is different than North Korea. All the different Asia countries behave differently. Japan's been in recession for a long time. The real estate market's been depressed. They behave differently. They control their interest rates differently. But the bottom line is that everybody has a fiat currency, and they're all struggling right now. So, Dylan, any takes on this?
Nothing major on this. I mean, we're going to see more and more companies start laying off people and people identifying, again, this is what we talk about, the essentials versus the unessentials. And I guess one point to point out that's it's relevant is that if you thought that Coinbase was going to onboard the next, 100 million people, 200 million, 300 million people, you're sorely mistaken, right? In order to really, for this industry to grow, like people need to be educated and people need to be have someone help them, right? And you can't do that with a centralized entity, especially one like Coinbase, because like you mentioned before, when Bank of America shut down, there's no customer service. It's very, very hard from a centralized entity to provide customer service and education to the masses. And so that's one of the reasons why we're doing what we're doing, is to be a resource that you can tap into.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see adoption. You see adoption on a personal level, which is a lot of people are already doing that. But also, I think business to business for adoption for cryptocurrency is going to be a big push too. But yeah, that's a great story that you brought, Patrick. But you brought another one about Saudi Arabia. You want to talk about that one now?
Yeah, this one's just more interesting relating to the dollar, right? We've seen the death of the dollar coming here for a long time. And Joe Brown calls it the de-dollarization, right? So we have seen like countries saying now, Saudi Arabia going again, saying we're going to be able to take any currencies other than the petrodollar now, I guess. We're open to Bitcoin, we're open to the ruble. They're not really saying what they're open to yet, but we know the dollar is dying. And here's just another symptom of the dollar going away, because if they're no longer conducting business for oil in the dollar, then there's no use, there's no more utility for them in the dollar.
Yeah, we've been seeing that for a long time. Dylan, what's your take on Saudi Arabia and other countries starting to settle in other currencies?
Same thing that Patrick said. It is a symptom of the dollar's losing its relevance on the global stage, or at least countries trying to shake things up, renegotiate, reshuffle their positions on the global stage and the global pecking order of things. And I don't think it necessarily means that the dollar will completely die, but it is putting pressure on the dollar, and so you can't neglect that.
So I guess like think of it like this. In the crypto world, we hear a lot of these ideas called pump and dumps, right? Someone will work very hard to have people support a project and inflate the value of a coin. Now, this is one of the things that I believe is starting to happen. Globally, they are starting to like just set the narrative of dollar equals garbage. I mean, it is crypto commitment number one. The dollar is garbage. But globally, you're starting to see them say the dollar is not what we want. The dollar is not what we want. Eventually, their tactics will lead to the dump of the dollar, which is the other side of the pump. When the dollar dumps, now it takes less gold to be able to pay back the value of your debts that you owe in the US dollars. So to them, there is absolutely no benefit for them to keep the value in dollars up. They're only working together to spread the narrative that the dollar is garbage.
Yeah, and the world economy, the fiat currency, the dollar-based system, they're all trying to keep it up as long as they can. Speaking of which, my take on, or my story that I wanted to bring today was kind of a few stories, which is about the meeting in Davos this week, and we have the WEF, the World Economic Forum, met in Davos this week. It's very expensive to attend, but more than 50% of them canceled. I think the attendance was supposed to be a record of 2,700 people, but more than half canceled. George Soros canceled. Klaus Schwab almost canceled, but he showed up anyway. There was some news reporters that went to Davos. I found this tweet there. They cornered the CEO of Pfizer, who was there. There's a list of attendees, and I think it was like 70 pages long, and about 20 of those pages were people from the U.S. It was interesting to see, but that they're there, they're doing interviews, they're talking to these people, and this is kind of like won't be safe walking on the streets. They were confronted about what's going on with all the money that Pfizer and Moderna are making in the last couple of years, and then also this story. I'll share this quick video. Greta, yet again, she's out there.
I saw this.
But
I saw
Greta, yeah, she was out there doing a protest to bring awareness to climate change.
Did you see the picture though? It looked like she was like being tortured. The picture, it looked like she was being tortured.
Yeah, and then there's your snapshot for the media. It's just like they're actually staged with the cops to take a picture. So it's not really happening. It's not really a big thing. But what to close out the story, and then you guys can give your opinions on the WEF. I'm sure they're colorful as mine is, but this will bring us back to crypto, which you're going to talk about next, and Bitcoin. But one of the stories that's coming out is the World Economic Forum will spectacularly fail unless it advances crypto regulation. So they're always saying that that's their next thing that they need to strive towards, which is to regulate cryptocurrency. So before we get into Bitcoin and mining stats, Dylan, what's your take on all this activity this week in Davos?
I mean, it's definitely a clown show, but I think since you brought up Greta, I think I might be misquoting it, but I think the essence of what she said was it's not illegal to protest the destruction of the climate, right? The destruction of the earth. And like that's was like her reasoning or rationale for going there and doing the protest and disrupting whatever she did. And in theory, that sounds good, but it's like, who gets to define that? What is the destruction of the planet? And how do you know? Right? And so I think you have to be very careful when you listen to what's going on, and when you do this yourself, of deciding what's good, what's bad, and thinking that you know everything. You know exactly what the implications of what you're doing are. You have to be very cautious with that, especially on these big grand scale things. And we know there's, especially when it comes to climate, like we know there's so much misinformation about, is it being destroyed? Is it not being destroyed? How much of an impact do we have, right? And what our role is in on that. And not to go down that type of rabbit hole, but right. And so there's a lot of information out there, or misinformation, or even debate on that. And you take a hard stance and say that you can do whatever you want because you've decided something, I think is a dangerous thing. And that's what a lot of people in power like to do. Hey, we've decided that this is the way it has to be, so you have to follow it. Otherwise, you get arrested.
Patrick, what's your take?
I mean, I don't really care what they think, and here's why I don't really care what they think. Dylan said the point of who really knows if we're damaging the earth, who knows what is best. I've been speaking to a lot of local farmers, a lot of local ranchers, and I could tell you that they know what it takes to make sure that their soil is fertile, and they understand when their soil and crop are healthy. They know how to do things like cover the ground so it like keeps the heat in from the earth, and like weird things that I've never learned. So there's no one who has more of an incentive to keep our waters healthy and our soil clean than the people that they're making out to be the bad guys, which is the guys running the tractors and the combines out there, and all the cows creating all their methane gas. Like, they're the ones who actually care most about our planet and how to treat our waste well and how to recycle the nutrients back into their soil. So to me, I just see it as a big like game that they're trying to play. I think they're irrelevant. Let them do what they want, because at the end of the day, our Bitcoin and our silver and our gold will be what speaks, and they can play their CBDC game for their genetically modified groceries, because we know better. That's the idea of what we're doing here. So they can talk. I don't really care.
Yeah, I think the only thing that we need to be aware of is the fact that they're out there trying to control a narrative, which goes at the top-down leadership, the leadership that buys into whatever the WF says, and these climate change initiatives, and you have all these social justice warriors that are out there saying we need to protect the planet, but there's no, it's all just esoteric stuff. It's no quantification of it. Like, what are we trying to achieve? What temperature of the earth are we trying to deal with? First it was global warming. Now it's the coldest, I think coldest Australian summer on record. So it's a moving target all this time. Now it's going to be about gas, all these gases and the carbon emissions, and that's what they're going to try into, which will lead towards the electricity and reducing the amount of power and controlling people through that way. It's all just ways to control the masses. So yeah, it's really tough, and it's once you see through the narrative, then you see through the government and you see through the leadership, and it's up to the people that are watching this show and share this show and get this word out that we don't need to buy into their stories. The people decide what's going on, not the government. It's the bottom up is way stronger than the top down.
Yeah, the most authentic way that we get our news is through our communities. I mean, really, when you have a farmer who's in your community out from like the New Jersey area telling you, here's what's really happening, here are solutions that we do within our community, and you learn what they're doing, and then you hear on the news that there's like no issue at all, no mention of food shortage, no issue of that the farmers are bringing any concerns, when they're bringing all these concerns. There's no coverage. So you start to use the news and the media exactly like what you guys are talking about with the World Economic Forum. It's like a filter of all the shit you don't need to worry about. All that crap, we don't worry about it. We start paying attention to what our friends and our community all across the nation and even globally are letting us know.
Well, we've got a lot more to cover on that in the leadership in our final segment, but let's turn the page over to crypto and see where Bitcoin is doing and some of the crypto stories that these guys have brought here. They brought some good stories. So first off, let's look at mining stats. So Patrick, this is your wheelhouse. I'll share the screen like you always like me to do. And you tell me where you want to look at on the tracking of Bitcoin hash rate and such.
Yeah, so I want you guys to scroll down a little bit, Jeff, and I just want you to look at the miners again. one of the things that you're seeing pop up, and you'll see it say coming soon. Let's stop here again. You're looking at the hash rate in total. Right now, the hash rate is right around 300 million terahashes, right? 300 million terahashes. That is a lot of hash rate. It is growing very fast. If you can find, let's see, go under, there you go. Keep going right down there. Basic ASIC hardware, power, and capacity calculator. Right down there, you're seeing the prices of the miners, but you're also going to see down there, keep going down, the new miners that are coming. It'll say coming soon. The S19J, I think you need to refresh it real quick, Jeff.
Okay.
Because they just added the S19J. And that is one of the ones that I've been watching the most, the XP. And that's the new miner that's coming out. Here you go. It's coming soon, right there, the S19 XP. That one's going to be a very profitable miner. This is the one I've been telling you guys, keep your eye out for. This is something I'm waiting to see before I'm calling bottom, and it's lining right up. The S19 XP, is, as you can see, is going to generate almost double the amount of the S19J Pro. It's going to be generating roughly $6, depending on where you're at with power efficiency. So you're going to increase the price that you are profitable from 10 cents to 14 cents a kilowatt hour. Again, that's for huge. People who are running miners, this is significant value in terms of how much money you're getting per kilowatt hour. So if you can have 40% more expensive power and still operate profitably, then we want to make sure that these are things that we're watching in our market. This is where you're going to start to see hash rates even increase more here. And you guys have heard me say this before. The hash rate is the heartbeat of Bitcoin. The higher the hash rate, the more secure the network, the more distributed the network. And so when we see the hash rate increasing, we're seeing adoption increase, we're seeing utility increase, and we're seeing security increase. These are beautiful measures here. And we're also seeing that out of the mining pools, we're seeing that the US is now going to be almost at 100 million terahashes. This is like mind-blowing for someone who mines in the US. But again, I'm happy to see the US miners are on it.
Yeah, it's quite a change. That it used to be China was the number one. That they're getting pushed by the U.S. so far.
Oh, I'm starting to get very happy about this because we know that China has had a significant dominance when it came to hash rate in the past history, and now what we're seeing is with the hash rate being more diversified, especially with Foundry, what we're seeing is the risk that we used to hear about with China taking over 51% attack has just gone further and further away from reality.
Yeah. Well, and also, it also to indicate that, I mean, it's good. Like if we're mining that much in the US, that positions Bitcoin very favorably for the United States. Right? If it's an industry that now we're leading in, right? Americans like American things, and they like things to invest in. They like to adopt things that are big here in America. And so that's huge, right?
And there was a tweet that kind of flew under the radar from Elon this last week. And he said something like, we didn't sell all of our Bitcoin. As a matter of fact, he still owns like a lot of Bitcoin with SpaceX, but also with Tesla, they only sold a portion of their Bitcoin. And he's waiting to get back into Bitcoin, not when Bitcoin hits a certain price because of its value, not because Bitcoin is a good deal right now, not because people want Bitcoin now. He will start taking Bitcoin when 50% clean energy.
Yeah.
That's your metric of accepting Bitcoin.
Did he say that again, or did he just reiterate that?
He said it recently. He said he'll get back in when Bitcoin is at 50% clean energy.
Isn't it at like 58% or something like that, according to the Bitcoin Mining Council?
I don't even believe that to be true either. Like, what is clean energy? I don't really
That's
care.
what I was about to ask. What is clean energy? Because, I mean, like, there's excess energy that Bitcoin, like, there's stranded energy all over the planet. Like, they can't be used for anything but these kinds of purposes. So
is nuclear clean? Because I think it's clean now, right? So
it's clean now, yeah. They watched coal, too. Coal's clean.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of things where you look at it going, that's your metric for you're going to start utilizing Bitcoin's power. is when the power consumption is efficient because of green miners by 50%. Like, I don't understand how that impacts the value of Bitcoin or the utility of Bitcoin. And if you understand it's going to be used intrinsically for a long period of time, even to the length it takes us to get to that, what do you think is going to happen to the price between now and then when you start using Bitcoin? It makes no sense at all.
We all know that Elon plays games, and this is like as much a financial decision as a public perception decision.
Man, if Elon had half a brain, as soon as Bitcoin hits $100,000, the price of a Tesla, he'll just say, hey guys, it's 1 Bitcoin for a Tesla. And he'll just get everyone's Bitcoin at that point. I don't think it's going to be like, oh, I have an opportunity. Bitcoin's high. People are ready to spend their Bitcoin. I'm sorry, we can't run that marketing ad, guys, because it hasn't met his threshold of Bitcoin being 50% energy efficient through clean energy. Like,
well, we'll also have to see how clean the stories are about all the lithium batteries and how clean that process is to create all the batteries for the Teslas in the first place. But we've got lots of other crypto stories to talk about. Dylan brought several of them this week, so let me share yet again. I think he brought one over. Let's see, which is this one about Bitslotto. So Dylan, please.
This is all over Twitter. I think they made an announcement and everyone's like, what are they announcing? And then they announced this, right? That they arrested the CEO. I think they arrested the CEO, and it was charged with laundering more than $700 million. Obviously, the United States, they don't like money laundering. And that was an issue back with the Tornado Cash thing with the OFAC sanctions about Tornado Cash and it being used to launder money, and it's being restricted and all that. That became a thing. That was an issue. And you guys are laughing, so I'd love to have you guys chime in on this as well. But I think the big takeaway from this is that they are putting procedures in place to regulate, to go after different portions of the industry. The more cases you hear about this, like the more time they spend prosecuting people involved in the crypto industry, the better they're learning and figuring things out. And the more likely they are to, at least in my opinion, produce some sort of regulation.
Well, we talked about this previously about, the big money will come in when there's regulation, but there's two schools of thought and they're fighting against each other. We just had a story about how the U.S. is starting to become closer to being the world leader in Bitcoin mining, yet the SEC, the CFTC, and the powers that be all hate crypto. So how does that work play out? Plus, I mean, you said I had to laugh because, they don't like money laundering. It really depends on who gets the money when it's laundered. That's another story. We'll talk about that in certain wars and former Khazarian areas another time. But I think that these are just stories that they're just dripping out there to get them out there, going back to everything that happened last year with 2 major crypto calamities and projects almost dying or completely phasing out. They're trying to push the narrative to getting CBDCs and regulation for crypto in the United States, and that'll allow the big boys to come in with their big wallets and buy up all the crypto that they can at that point. Patrick?
Man, I was really hoping you were going to ask me. I'm trying so hard not to laugh. Just like say the word. It's hilarious. Bitslotto, right? Like, who the hell is Bitslotto? I have been mining for so long. I have been like totally listening about what's happening overseas. I really thought it was like a Bitcoin salad place that was like laundering money. I had no idea who they were. How could it be an exchange? Like exchange of what? Like it's behind the salad store exchange? Like what are they doing here? I was literally
a lottery
with my seat, watching, waiting, listening to what was going on. I was on live with Crypto Jack. You know Crypto Jack. Great guy. And we were just laughing so hard. Even my tweet that went out, I couldn't even figure out what the thing was called when I was tweeting it out. I think I spelled it like Bitcoin salad, like Bit Salado is what I put, because I was like, what are you guys talking about? I was expecting something about like Binance or Gemini or Genesis or like maybe even the Grayscale Trust, or I don't know. I was expecting something really, really awesome. And this was like a total letdown of like, They don't even offer salad for Bitcoin, right? There's like nothing here.
Yeah.
That was
Well,
so funny.
I just don't think.
Go ahead, Dylan.
I guess I was going to say, like, it is funny. People are laughing at it, but I think it is important to pay attention to that they are actually taking action against companies like this that are in the space, right?
Dude, they're money
is ramping up.
laundering. They're taking action against money launderers. That's what they did wrong, not crypto. It's money laundering.
But also the labeling of that as money laundering. So you got to be very careful, especially with these precedents when they create lawsuits, when they arrest people, how things are labeled, how things are viewed, what they're associated with. All these things I think are building blocks for just regulation and crackdowns in the future, because now they have cases, now they have lawyers trained on it, they have teams trained on all this kind of stuff to be able to go after.
This is all a case for KYC. That's all. They're just pushing more of a narrative for the need for KYC. They want to know who is who so that money is not laundered. This is not a new story. This is exactly what they've been trying to do for a long time. FTX, BitSalad is the same exact issue.
Well, let's go over to our second story that Dylan brought to us, which is about 3 arrows. So let me share that up on the screen here.
It's just.
Oops. All right, there's the right button. There we go.
Yeah, so this is another thing. Founders of bankrupt crypto hedge fund 3AC mocked after pitching new venture. Right, so these guys collapsed spectacularly over the past year, and I don't know how many millions or billions of dollars. It looks like billions of losses. And these guys are supposed to be like really smart, knew what they're doing, ethical, but clearly they weren't. Now they're trying to pitch a new fund or a new exchange. And this is something I've talked about before, is you have to be very careful in this space. If the space allows it and regulations allow it and the people involved in the space allow it, these people are going to keep repeating the same thing. I think on the document, I have a quote below this about, I think I heard someone attributed this to a guy named Junseth. It's basically like, he was talking about, if you haven't come across Junseth, he's a character, smart guy, fun to listen to. But
so while Dylan's working through this bandwidth issues, here's the quote, and I'll read it first. So June said, "If in fact we did find a way to print money from a laptop with little to no effort, of course people would do that, and there would be battles waged over it." Makes perfect sense. So
yeah.
Go ahead,
I think I'm back, and I don't know if that was the exact quote, but the idea is that it's not really reaching too far. That people would set up organizations, business entities, structures. They would hire personnel. They would create these massive operations or these lean operations to create their own money printers and to extract as much value from the system as possible as quickly as they can before people wise up to it. And you're seeing it exactly play out with no one at the 3 Arrows Capital should never get a job in crypto again. Right? They completely blew up.
Not only do they have jobs, there are two other companies that have already wanted to partner with them. They're like, yeah, we would totally do this with them. Are you kidding me? What are you talking about? Do you not see, like, you guys, some of you don't know this, so I'm going to take a step back and explain this. Digital Currency Group is the parent company that owns, right? The first company they own is the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. So that's one of the ones they own. They also own, was it Genesis, right? So Genesis loan
they don't
or Gemini. Gemini.
No, Genesis, not Gemini is the Winklevoss brothers.
Yeah, so they own Genesis. And Genesis loaned money to 3 Arrows Capital in the tune of $1 billion, which was also entangled with the FTX debacle. So you've just got like a really big case here. So if they can somehow show that the Digital Currency Group is associated and has been commingling assets with 3 Arrows Capital and with Gemini, then they're going to lose their ability to not be sued into bankruptcy for the parent company, Digital Currency Group, which by then means that they'll have to liquidate assets under the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust. This is the huge warning. If they've got to liquidate, what is it, like 600,000 Bitcoin or something like that. They're like the largest holder of Bitcoin. So if you have to liquidate that much Bitcoin, you're going to tank the market. And that's the story we should be watching, is these like fraudulent thieves, these banksters, this other bankster in the crypto world is what they are. And they're no better than the ones we have today.
Yeah, we really got, like, these numbers are huge. Like, I mean, stories, millions, billions, trillions, but they're all relative. You need to keep that relative scale. Crypto is roughly $1 trillion market, roughly. But we've got some stories that are in the billions, and then we have a story that makes front page news that Dylan shared. There's only 700 million. That's a huge number. Yes, everybody would love to wake up with $700 million, but and the relatively speaking, it's peanuts compared to these other things like Grayscale and the SPF and the FTX. All that stuff is much bigger pieces of the crypto pie. And again, in looking at the bigger perspective, crypto is a small part of the global economy. Bitcoin is not even a tenth of the size of gold itself, and that's much smaller than the GDP of a country, which is much smaller than all the derivatives out there. So it's all relative, and the numbers are so large. It's like trying to count the number of stars in the universe. It's very hard to like even fathom these large numbers and distances and such. It just boggles your mind. So you have to kind of keep a relative scale. Millions is not that big of a deal in the crypto market or the financial market.
Yeah. And
but this looks like way too shady. You know, this looks like really something bad is about to happen, because the way I see this is you already know that they're under investigation. They've already released that they're investigating them right now, Gemini and Genesis. So at this point, it's a matter of time before there's a deal made to keep going. And the deal could include the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust.
Dylan, why don't you close out a crypto discussion with this quote here?
Yeah, I want to I'll do that in just a second. I want to juxtapose fiat money to crypto, where I said like where you can create crypto on a laptop, right? Anywhere in the world. You don't have to go kill people, like, and establish dominance over a certain set of borders to start printing your own money when it comes to crypto. Versus with fiat, you have to establish global dominance by pointing the biggest guns.
So while Dylan gets his bandwidth back, I'm going to say that, we talked a lot about the economy. We talked a lot about different stories here. We got this comment up here from Jeff Booth. I think it's time to like turn the page from the economic stuff over to the prepper stuff. So we got two other stories that Dylan's sharing on preppers. Then we'll wrap up with my usual history lesson, and then we'll call it a day. But Dylan, hopefully you're back with us, and we've got this story from Allstate. You there, Dylan?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm gonna hardwire in the next time, but
all right. So tell us about this Allstate story that you found as far as getting prepared.
Yeah. So there's just winter storm hit out here, and we're in the winter, and I think there was a story in Buffalo a few weeks back about people dying in their cars. So just a useful thing to be prepared for, to learn and understand how to survive a night in your car. Hopefully you're never stranded. But I just wanted to, we're all about being prepared, not scared. And so just like taking the steps that you can take in your daily life, things that you have control over, so that if you do find yourself in an adverse situation, that you can survive it, right? That you can get through it. So there's a lot of resources out there. I don't need to go into too much on it, but just understand that you should have some things that in your car to help you. Like you should have a blanket or an extra coat. I always carry an extra coat in my car, like an extra water bottle. Know that you shouldn't keep your car running all night. That if the exhaust pipe gets covered up, right, you get carbon monoxide poisoning and die, right? And before the rescuers can get to you. So just these are things to know, especially if you live in a cold area. But just wanted to share that, especially because I'm up in the mountains, so I think about these things all the time.
No, that's a good thing. And then Patrick and I, we always like to have our go bag just in case, just to have a bag in the car. You never know when you're gonna get stuck. So like have a bag. Just available just for a few things for an overnight if you ever need it. But I'll try to put a link to this article. It's a good article in the show description. But that's the other story that Dylan you shared. Let's get that up on the screen here too. This is about wines.
The wine. So again, to end this with some prepper stuff and some supporting local businesses. So this is the wine that I opened up, Peony Lane wine. It's got the guy who makes it, his name Ben. He's on Twitter, and he sells his wine for Bitcoin. He makes it in Peonia, Colorado. Beautiful place, natural wines, and he's really, his business has started taking off a lot because he was passionate about Bitcoin and had this winery. I think it might have been started by his family. He basically took over from his father. But he started the winery, and then he started pairing Bitcoin with the wine and kind of branding it as a Bitcoin winery, and so talking about wine and Bitcoin and making content around that.
I
Small
would
business,
really like
but
one of those. I want one.
you can order them. Yeah, he takes Bitcoin, he ships them, he delivers them and everything, and they're good tasting, right? And so like I could buy the cheap wine from who knows who made it from the liquor store, or you can support someone local, like doing something who shares the same values that you have, and that's trying to build something for themselves. So that's why I wanted to bring this up. That's why I wanted to share this.
Man, in
That's
Oregon, we got a
cool.
lot of good wine, lots of
Mhm.
it, but we don't have any Bitcoin wine.
You need to change that, Patrick.
Yeah, I want Bitcoin wine. I don't even
All
really
right, so
like wine, but I want to try Bitcoin wine so bad.
It tastes better.
we'll get this in the show notes too.
Okay,
So,
good.
all right. So again, I want to remind everybody before our last segment, check out the ticker that's going across the bottom. We will, Patrick and I will be there live in Wisconsin due to an obligation. Dylan will have to be there, but he'll be there virtually. And we'll all be speaking on February 11th in the greater Wisconsin area, somewhere near Madison. The details are down below. If you have questions, contact the show or contact Eva White, who's going to be our generous host there, who's facilitating the events. Tickets are very inexpensive, only $179 for the day. I think you get breakfast and lunch, and you get $50 off with a code that's down there. I think it's EW, or you'll see the letters. But the first 50 people get $50 off. So, and it's only a few weeks out, so get your tickets now for that. So we'll be talking a lot of things we're talking about now. We're also doing AMA to take your questions. It would be a very interactive experience. But the last segment of the show is kind of like, it's either like some woo-woo or some history or whatever. And I wasn't sure what to talk about because, there's too much running around in my mind. So Patrick said, why don't you talk about, DC, that it's not part of the country. So Patrick, why don't you just pose the question again so I can get ready for it?
Yeah, I think the idea for me was when you were trying to tell me that DC was like not part of the US, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I remember my partner, Tim, when we were sitting over there and we were listening to Paymon, and he's like, yeah, we're not even in the US. And Tim goes, well, then where the hell are we sitting? And like we're sitting in Texas. So I'm sitting here going, where is DC, right? And it took some time for me to wrap my head around like what the hell happened with all of that. And now I take for granted that I know this information, but I forget that a lot of our viewers may not understand the significance of this.
Yeah, and feel free, you guys, to interject with any questions on that. But I'm going to post this story in the notes as well. Let's get that up on the screen while I look at my own notes. But yeah, this is a story I found. This is it's not often discussed on the internet, but it's about the three corporations that run the world: the City of London, the City of Washington, D.C., and Vatican City. And the interesting thing about those is they're not governed by their local countries. Like the laws of England do not apply to the City of London. The laws of the United States do not apply to Washington, D.C. And the laws of Italy don't apply to the Vatican City. They're basically independent entities. And they have very significant features. One of them is considered the home of law. I think that's the United States. There's the home of religion and spirituality. That is, religion, not spirituality. That is the Vatican City. And then there's the economic city, which is London. And they all have obelisks. We all know about the Washington Monument, but you can see here's the other obelisks there. The Washington, D.C. is the most famous one, but London has one, and so does the Vatican. And this, like the D.C. part, there's a lot of stuff that's in here and how it came to be. But the United States one came to be because of, back to the story I mentioned probably an episode or two ago about Act of 1871. That's when the U.S. was basically bankrupt, or one of the times they've been bankrupt. They're probably bankrupt again now. But they basically had to finance or get the economy going again after the Civil War. So the Act of 1871 basically incorporated D.C., sold it essentially to London, And that's why it's really a different part of the United States. They say it's not a state, and they talk about taxation without representation. A lot of people in DC talk about that, but DC is not a part of the United States, and it is a democracy as opposed to the representative republic that we have in the United States. And this is where we have started to talk about two different constitutions, but it all goes back to the event in 1871. The DC is different. And when you hear some of the leadership say we need to protect our democracy or democracy is being challenged, it's because because DC is a governing body that's a foreign entity that's trying to govern the rest of the United States. So the democracy that's in place in DC is not representative, no pun intended, of what the original Constitution was, which was a representative democracy and a republic of 50 states that all got together for a common good. It was originally 13, but grew to 50. And it's not part of that. It's so what really has for us to get back to the way things were, we need to deconstruct the DC entity and get that back to be part of the United States, or just forget that it's there and start over again. But the DC, the District of Columbia, was originally, it was altruistic, and they donated land from Virginia and Maryland to make DC. But in 1871, that all changed, and then that's how England got you have to think about the history and the perspective of the United States being about 250 years old. We're like the it's been a few generations since we left England, but they're still bitter about it. Like every 60 or 80 years, they went back in. So after we got our freedom from them in the 1700s, they wanted back in with the War of 1812. And then they wanted back in after the Civil War. Well, that's when they bought DC. And now 1913 and 1944 and Bretton Woods, all these events, every so often, the jaded person who hey, you left us, we went back in, kind of like the China-Taiwan relationship happens with us. So people aren't aware that DC is not owned by the United States. It's not even a legal part of the United States. It's actually owned as a corporation through maritime law through England and London.
I told you guys. I told you. And then I tried to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
Please. I love it when people try to prove me wrong, because either I learn more or I get corrected, or my argument becomes stronger.
I wasn't successful. I'd never brought anything to you. I just the red pill moments for me really freak me out.
I don't pretend to know everything.
Changes. You can't look back.
Yeah, I don't pretend to know everything. I don't pretend to have everything 100% right. Sorry, Don, go ahead.
Oh, I just said the Matrix just glitched, right? You just saw into the Matrix, just from beyond the facade they want you to see.
Well, I found this out a little bit ago, right? And now I've just been learning more. And as you learn more, you realize, how did I not know this? I went to school. I was in school. I was there. I remember. I have the grades and the reports. I got A's and B's, but I got mostly A's, guys. I'm telling you, I didn't miss this part of school. I wasn't gone. There was lots of sex ed that my parents wouldn't let me go to, so I didn't know anything about girls for a long time, but I did not miss history. I even know the Take Me Out to the Ball Game song. I know baseball history, Jeff. Can you believe that? I do, because I paid attention. I got an A, but they never talked about this in history. Ever.
No, they own the curriculum. They only teach you what they want you to know to be a cog in the machine, and you have to go and get this information. I actually liked history. I've always liked history, but when you learn that you weren't taught, you were only taught what they want you to know rather than what actually happened. Our history has been, that's one of the things I really want to learn the most of. Our history has been manipulated. They say that the winners of wars write the history books. Well, that's never been more true with our own history, and we don't know the true history of what's happened in the past 100, 500, thousands of years. We don't know what the actual story is. So, but I think this has been a great show, guys. I think we've had a great discussion, lots of different topics we covered. Patrick, what do you want to say about the highlights for the last hour for you?
Man, guys, just want to remind you again, things are looking like it's getting tough out there. So be calm, be patient, have a plan, put a plan together, be prepared, reach out to your community. Again, I'm going to keep hitting on this because You guys, we need to survive together. We need to be each other's eyes and ears. Please don't forget to comment. Let us know what you're seeing out there, right? We want to know about the egg situation before it becomes the egg situation, because we already know about it. So I need you guys. We need you guys. The community needs you guys. Please like, subscribe, share with your friends to get this group growing.
Yeah. Dylan, what are your final thoughts for today?
I guess to echo kind of what Patrick said is like connect with your community. And again, what I always say is focus on the real things, the important things. And sometimes, you know, you just got to have a glass of wine. And if you have a glass of wine, make sure it's Bitcoin wine, right? From a local, someone local who's building something.
Yeah.
That matter. Invest in real people. Stop giving your money to entities that don't matter.
Yeah, definitely invest in yourself, invest in your own education, invest in your local community, because if it hits the fan, it's going to be your neighbors that you got to be relying on. So you need to be prepared and not scared. So we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next time.